Recording. Ditch the stress and fall in love with budgeting. Tune in to hear Zach Whelchel's inspiring story and vision for helping individuals align their finances with their core values. Unlock your path to financial freedom with My Budget Coach, where minimal guidance meets maximum mastery. Hello, and welcome to the Happiness on Tap podcast, where guests dive deep into the vulnerable experiences that contribute to their happiness. I'm Leanne Herron. I am a certified health and wellness empowerment coach, owner of Finding Resilience with Leanne, and the creator and host of this podcast. Thank you for joining us for Master Your Money with My Budget Coach with the founder, Zach Whelchel. Hello, Zach. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited for our conversation. I love your shirt. That's great.
Thanks.
Gotta flip up a little bit. This episode is part of our entrepreneur series. Zach is a software developer, entrepreneur, husband, and father of 2 young boys. He has always been different when it comes to money. In elementary school, his friends built their own economic system in the backyard called Nutopia. And we will be talking about that here in just a bit. In college, he made over $1,000 recycling beer cups at a music festival to fund his study abroad. Also want to hear about that. As an entrepreneur, his passion is to help others and be intentional with their finances so they can build a life that aligns with their values. Recently, he founded My Budget Coach to help the world fall in love with budgeting. So, Zach, can you tell us a little about what you do?
For sure. Yeah, I'll start off by saying you complimented my shirt. So this is, we have the My Budget Coach shirts. I just want to say my children are 3 and 2, 2 young boys, and we have shirts for them that say Mini Budget Coach, and it is their favorite thing to wear now. They wear them all the time because they want to look like daddy, and they ask me to put mine on as well. So it's super cute. But yeah, so what do I do? Like you mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur for most of my career. Started a couple of different companies, exited one of the companies successfully. I've also failed a lot. I've started companies that have failed. I've kind of been through the ups and downs and the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. But this is kind of my latest passion and something that I'm so excited to be building because it's something that aligns very well with what I've cared about throughout life, which is helping people be intentional, helping people kind of take control of their life instead of being reactionary to say, I'm going to be intentional, I'm going to make a plan, and I'm going to kind of build the life that I want. So really passionate about this space and excited to be here to talk to you about it.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I love the shirts. I love, when our kids are little like that and you realize how much they watch and hear everything we do and say. And it really
Yes.
is, our job to teach them. And I know I've heard you in other episodes talk about how you have already started with your kids. So I think that's just amazing. Starting early is not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people will say about money and about budgeting, like, man, nobody taught me this, right? Nobody taught me this in high school. Like, how did we get this far in life? And I never really learned. So we're really trying to teach our kids early. So, my boys are 3 and 2, and every time we go to Walmart, they get $2 more to go in their wallet, and they can either save that money or they can spend it. And at first, they would always spend it every time, and then they kind of realized that that this card they wanted was $3. So if they saved a little bit, the next time they could afford it. So they're slowly kind of learning those patterns and those habits. And recently, my 3-year-old saved up to something that cost $10. So that's 5 full trips
Ah,
of self restraint. Which he's not great at self restraint in all categories, but at least we're getting there a little bit with money. So
I think that's fantastic. And you're right. Like I work with clients who are quite a bit younger, and yeah, they're saying nobody ever taught me. They don't balance a check register. They don't look at their bank statements. They kind of live paycheck to paycheck. They have big dreams and big goals, but nobody taught them how to budget their money. So we go to the very simplest of steps to see if they can start there. And we, review bank statements and look at where their money's going. We do what I call plugging your money drains.
Yeah.
So we look at all of those things like subscription services and shopping addictions. Like where's your money really going? And where are you willing to make those sacrifices to get your big dream and big goals? So yeah, I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I hope to see more people get involved in it and learn. And I'm a math person. I was an accountant for 20 years, so budgeting is something that was very natural and normal for me. Um,
Sure.
but you don't realize how hard it is to teach people who are older how to change their habits.
Yeah, it's a mind shift change for sure. And I think that the encouraging part is once you realize it's all about what do you want more, it's not about like having to not have as much. It's just
Mhm.
about what do you want more. And you can kind of afford not anything, but you can afford a lot of things. You just choose what it is you want to afford. And when you sit down and make a plan ahead of time, then you make sure that your behaviors align with what it is you actually value. And I think once people learn that, I think that they're much more into the idea of making a plan.
Yeah, and I do that also with clients. We try to get away from the either or and move
Hmm.
them into the both and
Yeah.
to make those mindset shifts because you really can have what you want. You don't have to say, well, I can either do this or that. Well, you can do both. So yeah, it's a lot of mindset shifts for sure. So, real quick, Happiness on Tap's mission is to deliver exceptional value to our listeners through insightful education and practical tools. This series will feature expert tips and actionable strategies shared by our guest as they discuss their entrepreneurial journey, including their challenges, obstacles, and lessons they've encountered. Our goal is to equip you with knowledge and resources to save you time and enhance your entrepreneurial endeavors. So let's get started. Zach, can you share with our listeners the journey that led you to create My Budget Coach?
For sure. Yeah. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, I've always been obsessed with money or had a kind of a different take of money, even from a young age. So my friends and I used to play this game called Nutopia. So, while most kids were getting together and, doing whatever, we had this idea where we would split up my friend's 10 acres property into land. So everybody got to start with, I think it was like 400 steps of land. So, the person with the biggest foot would step around 400 steps and that would be your land. And our currency in this kind of world that we created was walnuts. So there were walnut trees throughout the property. And when walnuts fell on your property, those were your money. And quickly we needed a way to kind of store that money so it didn't get, lost in the creek or anything. So a banking system emerged in which we would put our money in a bank. We had trade routes. So if you took like goods across trade routes, you had to pay taxes to the country that you went through. And then we had a government where we would incentivize improvements to the land, right? So all of this was just kind of this weird take as children where we were learning, how to kind of build these economic structures and stuff. So I feel like I've always been, I grew up middle class. Money was tight at times, right? And I wasn't always able to afford things or not afford things. So I think I had that kind of scarcity mindset from an early age as well. The other kind of interesting anecdote you mentioned was the beer cups. So when I went to England to study abroad, I ended up going to work at the Olympics actually in England in the 2012 Olympics. So I went and worked on the camera crew. Got to be in the main stadium and see Usain Bolt run, his thing, which was really cool. But in between my time at the Olympics and studying abroad at Oxford, I had no money, and I was lucky enough to have somebody to stay with, and they their daughters were going to this festival, so I went with them to help them like recycle. But in the evenings, there was this program where you could get 10 pence, which I guess was like 13 US cents for every cup that you turned in. And so I did the math and realized, oh my goodness, you could make a ridiculous amount of money per hour here. So I would spend 6 hours a night as soon as those gates opened, collecting as many cups as I could, turning them in, stuffing kind of my jacket with, they would pay you in coins. So stuffing my jacket with all these coins and sleeping in my tent at night in the field with thousands of people. And eventually went out and opened my own British bank account and made over $1,000, and that kind of lasted me through my time studying abroad. So this idea that money management has always been important to me. Taking advantage of opportunities, the scarcity mindset, all of those have kind of led to kind of my personality. And when I became older, started different companies, and I've always been into the intentionality space. So like I mentioned, helping people be intentional with their time and their effort and their money. And the reason why I love money so much is because there's hard numbers associated with it. It's easy to look at those numbers and say, how did I actually do and what can I do differently? Whereas time and energy, those are a little bit more nebulous and hard to work with. So super excited to be working in the budgeting space and kind of building this new platform.
I love it all. How young were you guys when you were doing Nutopia?
This was like elementary school. So I think that we used to play a
Wow.
game called, I don't know if you've played Civilization. It's like a computer game where you kind of do a similar thing. So we were just trying to emulate, we would play computers at night, and then our parents would say, go outside, you can't play computers anymore, right? So naturally we would try to replicate what we were doing on the computer just outside. And that's where that kind of started.
I love it. In fact, my son in his teenage years, um, I was always kind of hard about what games I would allow him to play. I didn't want him playing, anything where there was extreme violence. Um, but he developed this love for Minecraft. And I
Sure.
loved watching, just sitting behind him and watching his brain work. And he would explain from, growth to paper to, building to walls and having to have money to go buy things. And I loved watching his brain. Like it felt like I
Yeah,
could see his brain spinning while he was creating, and the excitement he'd get in explaining what he did. And then he'd get it all down and he'd run around and flip all the switches, and you could see all the lights turn on and how the electrical was run. And I was just like, this is fascinating. I don't
yeah,
remember having quite that level because I was more a play outside all the time kind of kid, but
sure.
I, I was a tomboy and I was dirt biking and chasing lizards and walking walls and all that stuff with my brothers, but we didn't have that technology back then.
Sure. Yeah, video games get a bad rap, and I think the studies on them show that like overusing is not good, right? But I do think there are some use cases, some of these games where they challenge you. With my boys, we've slowly started introducing games, board games, video games, but we make it a social thing where daddy's there with them. We're talking through it all. We're like it I think there's a place for it, and we're going to try to
Mm-hmm.
do that intentionally with our kids. But that's really encouraging to hear how your son, it was a good thing for him.
It was, and his friends would come over and, they'd hang out and watch each other build, or they'd build different parts of whatever they were working on, whatever village or whatever. And it wasn't, being in the room, I wasn't hearing the trash talk from,
Yeah,
another player. It wasn't violent, it wasn't aggressive. Um, and my son was a Boy Scout, so he was just very calm and, more into learning things and being outside. But Minecraft really expanded his knowledge and made him want to learn to do more. And he was very much just a hands-on kid. He ended up being a welder. um,
oh cool.
Academics was not quite his interest, which was fine, so we put him at Job Corps and he learned a hands-on trade. um,
Yeah. And also from an entrepreneurial perspective, I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to wear a lot of hats, you have to do a lot of things, you have to keep a lot of plates spinning. And honestly, like a lot of the board games I play, a lot of the video games I played, like kind of taught you how to manage all those things at
Mm-hmm.
once. So, if our job as kids is to play, that prepares us for, doing things when we're adults. I think that type of play might be very helpful and lend itself towards, being successful as an entrepreneur when you're older.
Absolutely. And that is something that I'm learning now in developing and still morphing my business is to pull on my experiences either in previous occupations,
Mhm.
as an accountant or in the legal field, or I, was part of the startup crew for the New Mexico lottery when it first opened. And, we were given a building and it was empty. And we had to fill that building, hire staff, buy vehicles, travel all over the state. And I've forgotten how much of that I kept inside of me and still know how to do and how to think and how to, make contacts. And at the same time, also, I used to work for the Chamber of Commerce, and part of my marketing and sales responsibilities was hosting what was called business at breakfast or business after hours. And Kristen got to be one of my business after hours guests, and she came and she presented. And then we had networking after. And again, I took those experiences from my past to help enhance my business. So yeah, I agree. It all comes full circle, and sometimes you don't even realize what's happening.
Yeah, it is cool that each of us, like, we have this journey, we've done these different things, they prepare us for certain things we'll do in the future, which is really cool. I love your story about the New Mexico lottery. That idea of just jumping in and doing it, right? A blank slate and a canvas, and you just have to make it all work. That's what entrepreneurship is. And usually you fail a couple times. It sounds like you were successful your first time, which is awesome. But like, I've done that several times, and I've failed a lot, but each time you learn something, and it helps you be better at the next one. So
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more. So, what is the core mission and vision of My Budget Coach? And how do you aim to help users transform their relationship with money?
for sure, yeah. So our core mission at My Budget Coach is just to help the world fall in love with budgeting. So we think that budgeting is this really powerful tool that all of us should be doing. And when you do it, you get to align your priorities with your values, right? So as a company, we're not here to tell you what your values should be. We're not here to tell you how you should spend your money. All we're trying to say is that whatever you want to value in life, let's make sure that your spending lines up with that, right? And we think that if people are empowered to do that, then there will be better outcomes in the world, right? When people are actually spending the way that they value, then that'll lead to kind of a more flourishing society. So our goal is to help people do that. And what we've seen is that budgeting is hard. There's a steep learning curve. Most people have tried it, and then they fail, and then they give up, or they get frustrated, or they're too rigid with themselves. And then they kind of think, well, if I can't do it perfectly, then I'm just not going to do it at all. So our kind of unique approach is that we connect you with a coach, right? So that's why we're not in My Budget, we're in My Budget Coach. And we think that that real life connection to a coach, to somebody who's done this, to somebody who knows how to help you, is what's going to help people get over the learning curve. And it's going to be what helps people actually make a lifestyle change, because living in your budget, it's not just a one-time thing you do. You don't just, open an Excel document, write a couple numbers, print it out, and like, all right, we made a budget. That's not going to change your life. It's not going to change how you behave. So we think that a budget should be kind of this living document that you're working in. You're categorizing your transactions as they come in. You're kind of filling up which buckets you have and where you want to spend your money, and you're making adjustments in real time. And that's what we want to help people do.
I love it. I love it. And working with people to also help them identify their values,
Sure.
I think that helps the connection. I don't think people really sit down and do the time of identifying their values and then working their life around that, like setting boundaries and those kind of things. But when you realize you're within your values, those things don't seem so foreign or so
Yeah.
hard. Because you're like, oh, okay, I guess I am living within my values. And that's actually a class that I've taught, is to teach people how about their value system. I don't tell them what their value is, but we go deep into identifying their value. And that helps with identifying their purpose and their passion.
Yeah.
And when you make those things all work together, it's this beautiful world. It's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah, agreed.
So, how does My Budget Coach differentiate itself from other budget tools available on the market today?
Yeah, so there are a lot of budgeting apps out there. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of budgeting tools. There's a couple of different subsets of budgeting tools. Ours falls into the zero-based budgeting, or the digital envelope system, is what some people would call it. And so what that means is that you give every dollar a job. So you start out with the app, you add all of your accounts, and it takes all of the money that you own currently and it puts it in a single pile. So pretend like you go to all of your checking, your savings, you take all that money, you pull it all out, you take it home, you dump it on the kitchen table, right? Got this big pile of cash there. What we then say you need to do is you need to say, hey, let's give a job to every one of those dollars, right? Let's start getting some buckets or some envelopes and start filling them up with the cash. And you can say, well, I know I've got my mortgage coming up next month, so let's set aside enough into that envelope for the mortgage. I know I need to spend on groceries. I know I want to eat out. You kind of enumerate all of those things until you get down to the point where there's no dollars on the table. And when there's no dollars on the table, you don't have any discretionary fund. There's no slush fund at that point. Every dollar has already been assigned. And some people might say, well, whoa, I hate that, because what if I want to do something else? And that's okay. You can make a decision to change in the moment. But when you need to pull dollars from an envelope, when you get to choose which envelope you want to pull those dollars from, you're making a real decision, right? If you see something on Amazon and it costs $100, you're like, this is awesome. Yesterday, we went paddleboarding on the lake and my wife fell in love with it. She managed to get both kids on the front of the paddleboard and she stood up and she was going, and then it started raining and I was hiding under a tree somewhere, but the kids were loving it. And my wife was like, I love paddleboarding, I want to do this. So paddleboards cost like about $120. We're looking at which one we want to buy. But yeah, in order to do that, we didn't have a plan for paddle boards earlier, right? But we get to say, where do we want to pull that $120 from? Is it worth it to us to eat out a little bit less this month and next month? Is it worth it to us to buy less clothes this month? And by looking at a real comparison, you get to make a real decision. Because a lot of people will just look at their bank balance. They'll be like, oh, I guess I have $120 in my bank balance. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just go ahead and spend it, right? And what they're really doing is they're making a decision for future them, because that $120 was going to be spent on something else and now it can't be. And that's fine. You can make those changes, but I'd much rather live in a world where I get to know what I'm pulling from, because then that's a values question. Yes, I value this paddleboard more than I value going out to eat a couple more times this week.
And I
So
love
that's
it.
that's like the number way that we differentiate ourselves, is like that zero-based budgeting. The
Okay, I
second
love
way,
it.
like what I spoke about earlier, is just this idea of being connected to a coach, right? So when you start our budgeting app, you pick a coach. So you go in our directory. We have about 20 coaches. We're constantly growing. We're having new kind of cohorts of coaches going through every couple of months. We offer like a training class to get these coaches up to speed on how to teach in the platform. But what you do is you select a coach, and when you log into the app, that coach has like a virtual version of themselves that they've created that you can interact with. So you can have these kind of conversations with it. It jumps around the screen. It teaches you how to use the software. It answers some of your questions. You can also message them. There's like a messaging center where you can actually talk to the real coach. And then you can also set up a Zoom call with them as well, so you can meet with them in real life for an additional fee, but everything else is built into the price. So our goal is to connect you to a coach at all of those tiers, so that you can really get over the learning curve, get the advice, the encouragement that you need. So those are kind of the two main ways that we differentiate ourselves.
Fascinating. On the virtual coach, who you ask questions and then they teach or they move around, like you said, um, I'm assuming that's all AI.
It's not AI. So
Oh,
AI,
okay.
AI is cool, but a lot of people in the money field will say like we don't trust it in the money field yet, right? Because if this computer is giving us advice on our money or what to do or how to
Mm-hmm.
spend with our money, we just don't trust that yet. And we really value that connection to a real life coach. So each of the coaches on our platform has created this huge kind of behind the scenes, it's a flow chart. It's like a choose your own adventure book where you're having a conversation with them and you can kind of choose, whether you answer this way or this way. And if you answer this way, you go to this part of the conversation. If you answer that way, you go to that part of the conversation. So our coaches have put in, tens and tens, dozens of hours into building these really cool digital versions of themselves that are prepared to have all of these conversations with their users. And the cool thing there is that users can tackle it at their own pace, right? They can do it at their own time. They can do it whenever they want, right? The coach could be asleep and they're still there kind of interacting with the digital version of themselves. And the coach kind of gets insight into how they're doing and can reach out at any point with like a real message to supplement that.
Yeah, and fascinating.
Yeah,
And I guess too,
it's a
that really gives you the opportunity to work with the client um, on their objections or on their worries or on their fears, because it can hone in specific words that they ask, that may be related to, yeah, a pain point or a fear or an objection. Or that's fascinating.
For sure. Yeah,
Fascinating.
it's definitely a new take. Part of the reason, and I think we'll get into this, but part of the reason why we're doing this is we want to scale budget coaching. We want it to be more accessible. We want it to be something that more people can do. And right now, if you want to meet one-on-one with a budget coach, it's expensive because that person's time is valuable and their one-on-one time is valuable. So we need to build tools that allow coaches to scale themselves so that more people can be learning from them and interacting with them without needing their, full one-on-one attention in order to do so. And this is kind of one of the ways that we're innovating in that way.
I think that kind of goes into my next question. Is one of your goals is to lower the barrier entry for budgeting. So some of that is, having access to those things. But can you elaborate on the challenges that people face when it comes to budgeting and how My Budget Coach addresses these issues?
Yeah, so there are a couple different barriers. The first one is, usually you need a tool and an app that helps you, and the apps can be expensive, right? So we offer a 35-day free trial so that you can really get in and start using it and get a feel for it and see if it's going to change your habits before you commit to paying anything. And we don't ask for a credit card, nothing like that. It's not one of those free trials where you'll forget about it and end up paying for it. We
Mm-hmm.
really want to just be there to help first. But also, like I mentioned, we're trying to give you access to this premium coaching, for free initially at the start, because during your 35-day free trial, you get to use that avatar, interact with that coach, message them back and forth. And all of that, is before you put your credit card information in. So we really want to lower the bar to entry because a lot of people beforehand would be afraid to start budgeting, would be afraid to pay, hundreds of dollars to sign up for a coaching program. But now they can get started for free for 35 days and see if it works for them. And so, we hope that that means more people will kind of jump in and see if this can work for them.
I think that's fantastic. I think it helps a lot of people, uh, maybe who are a little leery about making the investment. If they get some time to play with it, I know that that's something that I've learned and experienced through like Tony Robbins and when they launch a new product, because they recently just launched a pretty major platform, um, for new coaches or just anybody who's kind of looking to launch their business, and it takes care of everything. But they did do, a 30-day free. They did, and they just kept kind of throwing in extra little free bonuses so people could try different pieces and parts, to really see all of the bells and whistles and what it could really do for you. Um, I did, kind of struggle with this like almost hard pressure, um, weekly or sometimes twice a week emails that they were just constantly like, you don't want to miss this, you don't want to miss this. And they were counting the days
Sure.
down. And that to me was almost more of a turnoff because
Mhm.
I felt like you were interrupting what I was trying to play with and see if I liked it by every time I'd have to, see these emails coming in and this kind of hard push. Um,
Sure. That's it's such a running being on this side of a business. It's such a balance, right?
it
Because
is.
you want to help people achieve something that they have reached out and said that they care about, right? So when somebody signs up for our free trial, we have a box that says, what's your motivation? Why are you doing this? And it's so encouraging and sad sometimes to see what people type in, right? They're struggling with this, or they're really at this point in their life, or they're really trying to do this. So like we know that these people have said that this is really important to us, and we like I want to succeed for these reasons. So we feel like that gives us a little bit of permission to remind them,
Mhm.
like, hey, this is something you said you
100%.
wanted to do, and so, but yeah, it's always a balance. I don't want to be too pushy, but when somebody does, raise their hand and say, I need help, and these are the reasons why, then I do feel like we have some permission to then say, well, we want to try to help you. So, but yeah, I agree. Like finding that balance and the metrics and the conversion rates and all that stuff.
Yep.
It's a game to be played, and we're still fine tuning all of that for sure.
Yeah. And I know that the business is still, you're still growing it and developing parts of it. So, if I can throw in just things that I've encountered with different programs, or, it just kind of provides a little bit of personal
Yeah,
input as to what maybe turned somebody off or what motivated somebody.
for
Um,
sure. And
yeah,
and
it's
hearing
hard as a business owner.
Yeah, hearing that feedback though, like even I mean, this was for a different product, but hearing that direct feedback from users is so valuable when you're starting something, or even when something's growing and big. So like we put such a premium on that. Anytime any user is willing to, give us feedback, or we actually offer like Amazon gift cards to every single one of our users that signs up, I think at like the 5 day mark and then at the 40 day mark, and just say like, hey, are you willing to jump on a 10-minute call and just talk to us about your experience, and we'll give you an Amazon gift card, because we want to do whatever we can to hear what people need and then actually be giving them something that helps them.
Love it. Love it. All great value, Zach. All great value. So your journey is a very intentional approach to finances. Um, and we've kind of talked about your personal finance philosophy and how it is embedded in this product that you created.
Yeah. So you want me to go into kind of
Yeah,
how
yeah.
we got here and
Kind
how
of
yeah.
changed my sentence. Wasn't so much a question, but yes, please.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So, my wife and I, like, this is something that we've lived as well, right? Like, we've lived without budgeting, and we know kind of the chaos that comes from that. And we've lived with budgeting and know kind of the peace and the ability to grow that comes with that. So, we've been using a zero-based budgeting software ourselves for about 4 years now. And over that time, we have seen, a rise in our net worth. We've seen the ability to take advantage of unique opportunities. So we've basically gotten ourselves to a point, and we've worked really hard for a long time, where I could quit my job. My wife is mostly a stay-at-home mom in this season right now with our two young boys, but I just quit my full-time job in order to pursue this full time. And we were able to do that because we've been diligent with how we spend and save for a number of years now. And also along the way, there have been, like I mentioned, opportunities. Like we've had kind of real estate investment opportunities that we were able to capitalize on because we had been intentional. So these, people talk about like a negative spiral, where when you're kind of not doing great, each thing that hits you makes you go further down. We've had kind of this positive spiral of, because we've been intentional, because we've saved, we've been in a position to take advantage of other opportunities. We've been able to save more and ultimately do what we value with money, which what I value is, I value using that money to put us in a position where we can then quit our jobs and try to do something that can be helpful in the world, right? So, um, yeah, that's a little bit of like how we got here, but I'm just super grateful to finally be at the point where, um, yeah, we have a little bit of money set aside so that we can take this journey and this dive into this.
And actually, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's very valuable to us as entrepreneurs or people who get excited about wanting to leave a job, start an entrepreneur gig or a side business, but they're not financially prepared for that. Um, this is a tool that definitely helps people prepare.
Yeah, and I've done this the other way too, right? So I've started companies where when we were not financially prepared for it, and we've had seasons where there have been 6 months where we're paying people's salaries and yet we're not making any money, right? Where we're actually actively losing money. So we've kind of been on the other side of this as well. And I will say that the peace of mind that comes from having taken a few years to prepare for this, it's a complete game changer, especially now that we have kids and a family. Like it's just a complete game changer to have that ability to have a little bit of a cushion.
Absolutely. I was blessed, if I can say blessed, at the time that I needed to walk away from my 13-year career in finance because of overwhelm and PTSD, that I was able to walk away from my job and know, that we had money to cover me, time to get my mental health under
Mhm.
control, get in with a therapist, start working on myself, because, I'm like those young people who nobody taught them how to budget. Nobody taught me how to self-care.
Mhm.
So at the time when I had to leave my job, my father-in-law had just passed away. And he was an extremely frugal man, raising twin boys with more or less a stay-at-home wife. Um, but when he passed, he was so well invested that he left these beautiful gifts to his sons. And that's what gave me the opportunity to walk away from a career where I was making the most money I had ever made in my life, could work all the overtime I wanted. My kids were grown. I just had money coming out of
Yeah.
everywhere. Um, and I could spend it and I could enjoy it and I could do what I want. Um, but to be able to walk away from that and then go, okay, what am I going to do now? And look at going back to school, look at opening a business. And now 3 years in, I'm still kicking. It's not easy. I'm not flush with cash. It's still a struggle. But it is an amazing learning experience. Although I wish, like you, I had some time or the foresight to set aside money for that dream.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. Again, there are pros and cons, and I think there are seasons to life as well, right? Like, there are seasons where you buckle down, you do the thing that maybe you don't enjoy as much, and you save. And then there are seasons where you can use that savings to do something that fills you and gives you passion and stuff. So that's how I've looked at it, and it's good to be in this season now, and to recognize that we had a whole season where we prepared for this. But yeah, how cool that your father-in-law did that, right? Like, he chose what he valued with his money. He could have spent it all throughout, but he chose to be wise and invest, and it paid dividends, in his life, and it paid dividends in your all's lives, and probably in your kids' lives. And I just think it's so cool what you can do when you choose to be intentional, right? When you stop living paycheck to paycheck, when you put aside money, when you just step back and dream and say, what do I want, right? Do I want to have this? Do I want to quit this job? Do I want to set my kids up in this beautiful way? Like, we have the ability to do that if we just make a plan for it and act on that plan over time.
Yeah, it is definitely, it is something I appreciate. I appreciate that he has passed that knowledge down to his sons. Um, my husband is very frugal, but at the same time, even though I was flush in cash and we could do things, what we did with my money was invest in our home and updating, new washer and dryer, new refrigerator, new stove, redid the bathrooms. So, like, we knew that this is our forever home. We're not going to sell it. We're not going to move. Our mortgage is too great. Can't beat it. We barely owe $50,000 left on our mortgage.
Wow, that's
Um,
great.
Yeah. And our mortgage payment is, I don't even want to say it because people will rip their hair out. It's so fantastic. He's had this home for almost 30 years. So, he really got to learn those valuable skills from his father and make smart decisions that have set us up in a way that I was able to do that. Like any other situation, I probably wouldn't have been able to walk away from a job and invest in a business and have, the first 2 years of no profit. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's all wonderful. I want to talk to you a little more about the experiences that you have designed, the user experiences with My Budget Coach. I want to tell you a really quick story, and I thought about it when you were first talking about the digital envelope.
Okay.
Very early in my marriage to my previous husband, um, I was at the lottery at the time. I was making good money. They had great benefits. They also had like a mid-year and a year-end bonus. Of course, those are never guaranteed, but in all my existence of my career, I don't think I had ever had one at any of my jobs where we didn't get that year-end bonus. It may just be some years better than others based
Sure.
on, the profitability of the company. But, that was always money that we would know in the back of our head, well, that money's coming. That was what was going to fund Christmas.
Hmm.
But we never knew how much it was going to be. So it could be
Hmm.
$500, it could be $1,500. You didn't know what you were going to get, but you knew you were going to get some money to fund your Christmas. And my mother-in-law, who never worked a day in her life, she was also a very frugal person, living on one income, raising two kids, that kind of situation also. She did the budget. I mean, and she had envelopes, literal envelopes with
There
our
you
names
go.
written on it.
Yeah.
And every pay period by by 6 p.m. that evening, you were required to drive straight from work to her house and hand her $20 to put in your envelope so that you had so much money at the end of the year for Christmas. And if you didn't use it for Christmas, great. But you knew exactly what you had to work with. And we weren't relying on the what ifs or the maybe it'll be this much or, oh, well, we don't know if we can afford to give you this, kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And so when I work with my clients, we kind of start there at that most simple step. Take an envelope, don't keep it in your house, give it to someone you trust who won't give you the money, and make sure that you put that money in there and don't think about it. Because, when I'm working with somebody and their mindset can't handle a savings account, a checking account, maybe a secondary savings account for things like Christmas or vacations or whatever, they're like, well, if I see it and I have access to it, I can just transfer money. Um,
Yeah.
but that kind of, when you don't have access to it, unless there's a major emergency, we didn't think about it. We knew that we had good money for Christmas.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first part of what you described is kind of exactly how the system works, right? That idea, that kind of old idea, I sometimes talk about my grandparents gave me envelopes and said, when you get your allowance, some goes here, some goes there, some goes there. Turns out that's like actually a really good idea. Of course, in our modern world, carrying around envelopes and stuffing cash really doesn't make sense, right? So that's why we have kind of the digital equivalent with these digital envelopes, right? But that idea of having a plan and putting money in different envelopes so you can expect and know where you're headed, it is actually pretty brilliant and it works really well. And it also forces kind of the scarcity of what you have, when you have to work with the dollars that you have and you aren't automatically assuming you're going to be making more or you're going to get that bonus, there's a peace of mind of just dealing with what you have instead of always looking into the future and hoping that something ends up, because we don't always keep our jobs. Bonuses do or don't come. Unexpected expenses come up. I mean, no month is ever the same as another month. Every month always looks different. And so, being prepared in those ways is great. And then to the second point, the idea that, it should be inaccessible for some people, that's what it needs to be, right? Our system, the way it kind of works is that it's not necessarily that all this money is inaccessible, it's that you've just already given it a job, right? So you've already kind of put it behind a wall a little bit and said like, hey, this pays for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pull it out of Christmas if you want to, but you know what you're doing, right? You know you're taking away the money
Yep.
from Christmas. And so that provides a little bit of a barrier there. It's not as much of a barrier as, driving across to grandma's house, but it provides a barrier to where you know what you're doing, you know the trade-offs that you're making. And the truth might be that there might be some years where you want to take half of the money from Christmas because it's worth it to get a better car so that it's more reliable or whatever, right? But that's a cool decision that you and your partner can make together, right? You can look at those numbers and make that together.
Yeah. It just chimed that memory in when you were talking about the digital envelopes, because that's where
Yeah,
my mind immediately went to. This was how I was learning to budget,
yeah,
other than working for, a large law firm or the lottery, where I was dealing with other people's money, but
sure, yeah,
still having to work within a budget. And, at the back of my head, knowing that the better we do, the more benefit we see, um, was always something that worked for me. But the lottery itself was just such a passion project because my kids were little and I saw the benefit that they would have when they went to college,
mhm,
because that's where all the money goes to college funds. And so at their second semester of college, if they stay in state, is fully funded for 4 years. And to
wow,
me, that was my passion to show up every day to my job, was because I got to see the benefit, not only that it was going to do for my children, but children all over the state.
sure, yeah, that's cool.
So, are there other kinds of user experiences like that a typical user would experience on the platform?
Yeah, I guess I can walk through like what a user might look like, right? So they would go to our website. Our website is just mybudgetcoach.com. And the first button is just, find my coach. So the first part of their experience is they get to look through all these different coaches and pick a coach that resonates with them for whatever reason, right? So we like the idea that, money is super personal. Different people approach it in different ways. Different coaches have different ways of coaching. And so for you to get to go through and read these bios, learn a bit more about these coaches and find one that's just like, yeah, I think they would get me or I get them. In the therapy space, I have some friends who are, marriage and family therapists. One of the greatest predictors of outcome for like successful outcomes in therapy is just the affinity you feel with your therapist. And so we want to kind of replicate that in the budget coaching space. We want to give you that ability to find somebody that you find affinity with. So that's kind of a cool first part of it. And then once you get started, you'll receive an email that says, your budget is ready. You log in, and then that person's face, the coach that you chose, is the first thing that you'll see. And they'll say, like, hey, welcome to your budget. I know this is all new to you. There's a lot of numbers here and everything, but let me help you. And you just kind of click next and you answer some questions and you click next, and they'll get to kind of know about you. They'll help you create your categories. Each coach kind of has a different, category structure that they recommend, or maybe they'll ask you some questions and then help you tailor your categories based on that. Then they'll help you connect all your accounts. Once you have your accounts there, it's kind of like pouring out all the cash on the table, that analogy that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how much money you have to fill all of your envelopes with. So you take all that money and you start filling them. And then you'll be in a couple different situations. You'll be in the situation where maybe you can't afford everything that you need to spend on this month. And you can realize, man, I'm maybe living above my means, right? Or maybe you can afford it, or maybe you can afford it and you can go ahead and start saving aside money for next month. And in all of those different cases, the coach will be able to help you deal with that situation. And then if you run into a problem, maybe the digital version that coach doesn't answer something for you, you can just go to the message center, send your real coach a question. They'll get back to you within a day or so. And then that kind of relationship forms. And then, you know, before long, you know, you have this budget that you're living in. There's a mobile version of your phone too. So when you're out and about, you can see kind of how much money you have in your different envelopes. And your coach is there to kind of encourage you along the way. So that's kind of the journey that we want our users to go through, and that we've started to see users go through. And, you know, we hope that at the end of that, it's this completely different world for them where they don't have to worry about, do I have enough money for this? They don't have to worry about looking at their bank balance and running a bunch of mental math. They don't have to worry about wondering if they're just going to get so frustrated and not know what to do that they have to quit because they've got somebody there that they can talk to. And we think that that's potentially life changing, not only for them, but for their, you know, their spouse, their family, their children. You know, it's a generational thing. Like if you can learn to control your finances, like you talked about, like the impacts go on beyond just you, and that's a really powerful thing.
Genius. I'm so glad I get to have this conversation with you, because all of that is genius. I love it. Um, I guess where I connected right from the very beginning was, like you said, you log in and you get to select your coach. When I launched my business, I, you know, immediately learned as an entrepreneur about the value of having a mentor,
Mhm.
and found Score, who does free mentoring, and they will be your free mentor from conception to 20 years out. There's no
Wow.
charge, and you get to log into their website and you get to go through a bank of mentors and coaches and pick someone that resonates with you.
It's great.
And then you get to work with that person. And that was so exciting for me, to go through all the different bios and look at their backgrounds. And you could quickly be like, yeah, I'm not going to resonate with this person, like their background's military or architecture or farming or whatever, and
Sure.
find that person that was more in line with your direction, who you are, your values. And I worked with one coach for 10 months. And he's actually a podcast guest on My Happiness on Tap. So you'll have to take a look at him. His name is Max. I worked with him for 10 months. And he was, you know, one of those people that helped me remember to utilize my past resources. Because at the beginning, I was trying to look for networking opportunities. And I said, you know, I think I'm going to join the Chamber of Commerce and start attending their networking opportunities. And he goes, well, didn't you say you worked for them and you did all these events? And I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, so why are you not doing it for your business, for your clients, for your ladies, for your groups? And I was like, huh, thought never crossed my mind. You know, it just, we're talking, you know, I was doing that when I was 19 years old, 19, 20, 21, and raising a newborn baby. So reaching that far back into my past and looking at how is that going to carry me forward in my business was just not something that was at the forefront of my thought. So it was nice having a mentor, a coach, you know, point out those little gold nuggets,
Yeah.
um, to
And
make
this
you
is
think about things in a different way.
and this is another reason why I don't think AI does that, right? Like AI isn't that real connection with
No,
a real
it's not.
human that has
Mm-mm.
those real insights, right? So yeah, it's awesome that you got to pick somebody that you resonated with and it worked, right? And we hope that's the same for people who want to start budgeting.
Yeah, and I think it will be a very financially prosperous avenue for you. I really do. Hearing your thoughts, how you experienced it, what all you offer, this user experience, um, because you know, as a coach, we know that that connection, that people being seen and heard, and all of that is probably the biggest thing that we can do for people.
Agreed.
Sit
Yeah.
beside them, answer their questions, give them the path. So yeah, I mean, Zach, I think you've created an amazing product.
Thank you. Yeah, time will tell. This is definitely a new take on it, and time will tell. We're still trying to prove the market fit and all that stuff. But I appreciate your kind words for sure.
So for our listeners who are aspiring entrepreneurs, particularly in the tech and finance space, what advice do you have, since you have a lot of experience in both succeeding and failing? I mean, we all take lessons from every bit we do. What advice do you have about starting and growing a business that truly aligns with your personal values?
Wow, yeah, there's a lot in there. Again, I have failed a lot and I've succeeded some, right? And I hope this is a success, not only, for my family, but also, I mean, we give money to coaches. So we're the first like app platform for budgeting that shares revenue with the coaches because a lot of coaches were promoting other apps. They get kind of no money from that. We want to make sure that the whole industry succeeds here. Um, and also for our employees, like we have an employee share program, like all of these reasons we want it to be successful. But as far as like advice that I would give, man, it's hard to say what piece of advice is true, right? Because I've failed and I've succeeded. So take it with a grain of salt. But my kind of mantra that I've kind of developed over the years, actually, I have a poster behind me. I don't know if you're watching the video version of this, but you can see this poster. We call this the data intuition loop. So this is kind of like what we do to guide pretty much every decision we make. It's the idea that when you're making a decision, you should start with the data, right? Is this landing page or this landing page going to perform better with users? Well, we don't know. Let's see what the data is. Let's see, oh, well, when people visit the website and it says this, 50% more end up starting than this one. And in the absence of data, it's okay to use your intuition, right? You can say, I have no idea. We have no data. So I'm just going to come up with a sentence that I think is going to work and let's see. But when you use your intuition, you should then put in place the tool to gather the data. So you can see what the rate is, and then you can make an A/B test off of that, test something else. And so that constant loop between data and intuition, we're doing it everywhere all the time. Like right now, I'm focusing on running a bunch of Facebook ads. And I might think I've made this like beautiful ad that's really going to convince people to start budgeting, but I'm not the arbiter of truth on this. The truth is in the data, right? So what I need to do is I need to make 20 different ads, 30 different ads, 40 different ads. And I'm already seeing that the one that's performing best is the one that I probably would have put at the very bottom of the tier, right? So I think what that gives you is it gives you this humility when it comes to running your business because my opinion isn't always right, or Kristen's or Nick's or anybody on our team. It's not about who can kind of muscle each other out or be most vocal about their opinion. At the end of the day, it's the data that drives us. And so I think that creates like this culture of humility, this culture of iteration and experimenting. And I think it's served us well so far, and I think it'll continue to serve us well. So if I had to give one piece of advice, I'd say that's kind of what we operate on and what I would encourage other people to operate on as well.
I think it's great because I see it in a lot of different spaces in content creation and, you know, uh, creating a program, launching a course, those landing pages, and trying different things to see really what brings people in. And then, like you said, absolutely going back to the data and saying, yeah, no, this was the one. And
Yeah,
eventually, that will create, maybe for the most part, you know, something you'll stick with because it became the one over multiple products or multiple pages or
and it's a form of listening to your users, right? If you're presenting a problem and they're just not responding to that problem, then it's probably not the problem that they have, right? And then you present a different problem, they do respond to that one, then you've learned something about what your users need, right? And so it applies more to just landing pages. It applies to, everything. We always
everything.
say, let's get something done and get it done quickly, because we could close the doors and pretend we're super smart behind closed doors and we know exactly what the world needs and we'll spend 3 months building it and then ship it. But like that's kind of arrogant, right? To sit behind closed doors and think you know what people need. I'd rather get something out there quickly and see how it performs, get feedback and rapidly change. So that's kind of how we operate. we move quickly. We're constantly changing things and fixing things and breaking things. And that's by design, because we want to keep iterating until we find what's truly valuable.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's wonderful advice. I think it's something I hope people listen to and think about in their businesses, um, because it is a hard lesson learned. Like you said, you think, even with podcast episodes, when I had to pivot from doing this interview style, which I absolutely love more than anything in the world, but having to pivot to doing solo monologue, doing my business series, and thinking certain episodes would really resonate with people. And then you look at, how many views it got. Well, why did it, and then you can chase yourself into a circle thinking about, oh, was it the thumbnail? Was it that I took too long introducing my guest? There's so many pieces that you have to consider, but that's how we grow. You know,
Yep.
we got to look at all of those things as valuable data that
Yep.
we can tweak and continue
Yeah.
to learn and grow.
Yeah, what you're saying reminds me of another area of like search engine optimization. So there's this concept of when you're, writing a blog or making a piece of content, or you might be making a good blog, but is it something that people are actually searching for? Because if it's something people are searching for, then you know that you're meeting a need right there. You're really answering something people need. So when we go to write blogs for our blog, it always starts from a place of using a tool that helps us see, this search term gets, 16,000 searches a month and the competition on it is pretty low. Okay, well, this is a good place where we could write something that could really help people that people are already searching for. And again, you keep doing that in every part of your business, and it puts you in a place of humility, because you're here to serve. You're here to find what people need and serve them, instead of standing high on your mountain pretending you know what everybody needs. So
And I recently purchased a program to help me look at that data.
great.
It was saving me tons of hours trying to research and find the answers to those SEO questions. It's called vidIQ.
Okay.
And you can put in your topic idea and it'll go out and it'll generate other suggestions for your title, for your hook, um, based on that search engine optimization and what people are looking for. And then it'll also give you like, it's got a certain term, I can't think of it right now, but it'll pull information based on where that topic came up in other hits. So it's like
Yep.
4x is your, the interest in it because somebody watched the same topic on a TEDx show and it was on fire, so it kind of helped me, um, before, just coming up with my own idea, my own hook, my own, thumbnails. I can now feed them into this program, and this program will say, okay, I like this, but I don't like this. Like, try this thumbnail, or, maybe your title's too long, maybe shorten your title, and it'll give me different suggestions to help me fine tune that. And ever since I started using that platform, it has really improved, the number of views that my videos get. Which for me, that just means, I'm hopefully helping somebody else and helping more people. So, I don't take views and likes and all of that stuff, to deep heart, but, I can't ignore it. Those are numbers. Um,
Sure.
but it helps me with my focus before I even publish something. So I will utilize it when we finish this conversation in my publishing. It'll go through and it'll look at the video as a whole. So there may be a small tweak to the thumbnail or a small tweak to the title just because it was either too long or whatever, but it's valuable, so when you
It's
can look
cool.
at those things, it's great.
Yeah, it's such a changing world, right? There's so many things and tools and the platforms and all of that, and keeping on top of that, like it's a lot to do, but it's worth it, right? It's the work that we do in order to get our message in front of the right people to potentially help those people, right? And to potentially serve them in a way that's mutually beneficial. And it's work worth doing, right?
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much, Zach, for your time. It was an absolute pleasure learning about this amazing product. Um, I'm all in. I think it's fantastic. I think what you're doing is really going to impact a lot of lives and, their legacy, their children, their grandchildren, by helping teach that important skills to future generations. So, again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. This was exciting for me to learn more about it. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah. Thanks again for having me. This has been great as well. Yeah, so we have a website, mybudgetcoach.com. We're on pretty much every social at MyBudgetCoach HQ. Just put the HQ on the end of it. We're pretty active on socials, so just follow us on whatever your favorite platform is. And then if you want to find me personally, I am on X. My tag is at Zach Whelchel. And feel free to DM me or tweet at me or whatever. I love talking to any and everybody. So feel free to reach out to me personally or to the company.
All right, that is all great. I will make sure that that information is in the show notes so people will know how to find you. We want to remind our listeners that the information provided in this podcast is for education and informational purposes only. It's important to note that we suggest that you consult, professional advice. We recommend consulting qualified professionals in their respective fields for personalized guidance tailored to your specific needs and circumstances. But I really think this is a fantastic, valuable product. I wish you all the best. I look forward to watching it grow and learning more from Kristen, and just want to thank you for your time. This was fascinating.
Yeah, thank you again. Who knows? We can do a couple of these or one of these again in a couple of years and see how things have changed or whatever. But yeah, this has been great. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.